So in this tutorial, you'll learn how to make a very simple pause menu that can be controlled by the controller or controlled by keyboard and mouse. You'll also learn how to make a modular button that has animations attached to it and sound effects attached to it. And then that modular button can be used in any widget that you make. So you'll also learn how to add it to the screen and take it away from the screen. So pause, unpause. So let's go. So to start with, we're going to need a few things. We're going to need the input trigger, which triggers the pause menu. So it could be like the pause button on your controller, or it could be the P button on your keyboard, or the pause button on your keyboard. We're going to need that. We're going to need a modular button, and that will be sort of like a master button, and you'll be able to put that into any widget, and within that widget you'll be able to write what the button does. You'll be able to set the commands that you want for that button within the widget. So we just make one button that can be in every widget. We're gonna use some sound effects to add to the button as well. So when the button's like say hovered, for example, it will make a little beep. And I'll put some sound effects in a Google Drive document, and they're sound effects that I've made, so feel free to use them, but there'll be a few sound effects if you want to download them. And then we're just going to need the pause widget on its own. So like basically the pause menu, the screen basically that comes up when you press the button, and then the pause screen comes up. So that they're called widgets. Anything that's like a pause menu, a game over screen, a main menu, they're called widgets. That's what we're pretty much making today. So let's get started. So first of all, we're going to go down into our content drawer and we're going to create an input. So if you scroll down here and you look on the bottom left, see it says input. It depending on what version of Unreal Engine you're on, the input folder is at the top now underneath content, but it might be, if you're on an older version, it might be in third person. So if you go into third person, and then it will have the input folder in there. But if you're on the latest Unreal Engine, your input's there. So you click on there, you've got actions and default. If you click on actions, these are all the controls that you have already. You won't have fire, I've made this myself, but you'll have jump, look, mouse look, move. Right, we're going to create a new one. So you just right click here, scroll up to input and input action, and then just IA underscore pause. Right, you want to name them like this, IA underscore pause. This is the only thing really that I stick to strict naming conventions with, like with the input actions, because when you call them back up in other places, it calls them up with the rest of the input actions. So we've just made a pause button, right? We're going to double click this. We're going to open it up, and this is important. You see there, trigger when paused. We want this to be true. So that means basically that when the game's paused, we can also press the pause button to turn the pause menu back off. So you need it to be triggered when paused. And that goes for any other button that you want to use while the game is paused. So just save and close that. But that's not really going to do anything at the moment, because all we've done is made the input action. We need to add it to the mapping context. So go back up to the input folder and then see IMC default. This is where all your buttons are. So double click that and then see you've got jump, move, look, fire. Well, that was the one that I've made already. But see, pause isn't there yet, right? So we need to add it. So you see this little cross, click on that and it'll say none. Just press the arrow down, IA pause, and now we have pause. And now what we want to do is we want to assign this to the button that we want it to be. So on the keyboard, let's say we want it to be the P key. So you can press this and you can press the P and it will just automatically do it. But that's only P will trigger pause now. So you want to click this and add another one. See, it says none. So you could press this and press the pause button on your keyboard. And now you want to add another one. And then if you've got an Xbox controller, you can click this and press the actual pause button. and it's called Gamepad Special Write. If you don't want to press this and press the button, you can actually just search it through that arrow down as well. So what's important when it comes to input actions, right, is this isn't a pause button. It's just called pause. And I've allocated these buttons to do pause, but it's the code that comes after that is making it a pause button. The fact that I've called it pause doesn't mean that it's going to pause the game. I could have called this gobbledygook and it will still do the same thing. It's just that I'm assigning this pause here to the IMC default, assigning the P to it, assigning a pause button to it, and assigning the Gamepad Special Write to it. So that means whenever I press any of them buttons, whenever I want to trigger the pause code, those will be the buttons that trigger it. Now we want to set up gamepad detection. So this will tell it whether if we're using a controller or if we're using the keyboard and mouse. So for this, you want to go to your third person character. Go to third person, blueprints, third person character. Mine's already up. Yours won't look like this because this is some other random code that I've done, but yours will have these three things. If you're in third person, it will have these three things. So we're going to make a gamepad detection. So just find some space and see, I've already made one here. If you press any key, it's going to ask, is it a gamepad key? If it's true, it's going to set is gamepad. It's going to call is joypad, right? So I'm just going to make a new one just to show you through it. So to show you what I've done. So, right, so you come down here and on event dispatchers, you want to make a new event dispatcher and you want to make this and highlighted blue there, call this controller with a question mark. Right, so some things you can't name the same thing, so that's why I have to be quite careful here, right? So pretty much I'm doing this exact same code and then I'm just gonna show you what I've done. So we've got an event dispatcher called controller, right? Over here, go to new parameter and we'll just put is joypad question mark, right? So we're gonna do the event any key again, right click any key. Right, so this is doing the exact same thing. What I'm trying to explain is I'm just doing it again just to show you what I've done. Right, we're going to take this, we're going to come over to our variables, we're going to add a new variable and we're going to call it is controller. Right, and then on the event any key, we're going to make a branch, so you can hold B and left click and it will bring a branch up. If you just want to search it yourself, just right click branch. But hold down B and left click is a shortcut for branch. Unpressed, go into the branch. Out of the key, we're going to ask it, is it gamepad key? So you see, is gamepad key. We're going to bring that into the branch because that's basically, it's because it's got a return value of a Boolean. It's just asking, is it or is it not? So is it gamepad key, yes or no? Right, so if it is the gamepad key, we're going to get our is controller Boolean. We're going to set that to true. We're going to control C, control V, so copy and paste that variable. We're going to untick it. Right, so we set in the variable here, look. We're going to come off true, so we're saying it is the controller. If it's false, we're saying it's not the controller. And then the event dispatcher that we've made called controller, we're going to drag in and we're going to go call. And we're going to say call controller with this result. Call controller with this result. See, so it's basically saying it is a gamepad key. So we set in the controller variable to true and we call in the event dispatcher to say that it is a controller. So that's kind of set up already there. So I'm just going to delete this because I'm using the old one. So essentially this call is joypad and this is gamepad. is just exactly the same as these two things here. They're just called different things. They're doing the same thing. So I'm going to delete the one that I just made. So this is an extra thing. You don't need to do this. This is just an extra step. So this basically, if it is controller, we're using controller. If it isn't controller, we're using keyboard and mouse. So I'm just going to do a print string just to show you what it's doing. So that one says hello. This one says goodbye. So if I play the game, saying goodbye, I'm using a controller, it's saying hello. I pick up the keyboard and mouse, saying goodbye. Pick up the controller, it's saying hello. Right, so there's the one thing that's a bit frustrating with that is it doesn't pick up the mouse scrolling. I've looked a little bit into that. There is ways you can do it, but just for the purpose of this, the only thing it will pick up on keyboard is the cursor, the WASD, and if you press a button on the mouse. But for controller, it just works for every button that you press. So we're going to take them print strings off quickly. So now we're going to make a modular button. So a modular button just basically just means that it's a button that can sort of fit into anywhere quite easily, and it's quite easily adaptable as well. And you haven't got to keep making a button for each button. Basically, you could just use one sort of master button, and that does the job for everything. So we're going to go back into our content drawer. I have a folder called UIs, but if you don't have a folder, just go to content, right click in here, and new folder, and then just call it UIs. But I'm going to go into my UIs folder. We're going to right click, and we're going to go user interface, widget blueprint, user widget, and we're just going to call this button underscore UI, and double click that to open it up. We're going to grab a size box. We're going to drag that in, and we're going to go width override and height override. This is going to be the size of our button. So roughly sort of 200 by about 50. And then go fill screen up on here, desired on screen. So see, now it's the size of our button. Then we're going to go on comment. We're going to drag in button. So now this is just a basic button, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to, where it says button 6.7, I don't know what yours was 6.7, right? I don't know what yours would be called, but you see over here top right, it says button 6.7. We're going to change that to button main, and this is a variable. I'm going to close the style down. I'm going to scroll down here, is focusable, make sure that that's checked. Right, that's fine. Right, now we're going to drag text onto the button. On the text on the button, you can change all your fonts and all that. You can install new fonts. To bring new fonts in, it's very, very easy. Just find your fonts folder on your computer and literally drag it into the folder. Let me just show you quickly. So I'm in my fonts folder there. Let me just say drag in Anton. Drag that in. Would you like to create a new font asset using the imported font space? Yes. Right, and now we have that option in here now. So on my font family, see I've got Anton, so I could just put that in. Right, we don't really need to worry about the color and the font size and all that yet, because what we're going to do is, like I say, we're going to make this a modular button so you can adjust all this elsewhere. This is just the master button basically. So see text block again, we're going to come over here, is variable, we're going to tick that, and we're going to call this button text. So we've pretty much made the master button. What we're going to do is we're going to make, there's just a couple of little extra things you can do. So on the text block, look, if you see on the alignment, horizontal alignment is in the middle, vertical alignment is in the middle. I can put it to the side, put it at the top, but we're going to put it middle and middle. So the text is always in the middle of the button. Another thing that you might want to do is on the button main. So if you click back up on here, so basically the button main is the block, the main button, and the text is just the text. The size box is what's making it the size that it is. So on the button main, see on color and opacity, see style, click on here and see it says draw as rounded box. So this will always have like a curve around it, but you might want to keep it like that. But I like to put mine draw as image, and on pretty much on every single one, draw as image. Right, so it's basically just a square button, right? We're going to compile and save that. Now we need to make the code for this box. So we haven't got to really worry about all this hovered and styled and all that yet, because we're going to do it in the code. So we go to the graph. What we're going to do is we're going to come off event construct and we're going to set what this text should be, right? So we're going to come out of here, button text, get button text, set text there, right? Come off event construct, event pre-construct, not event construct. So yeah, event pre-construct. Event pre-construct is what happens before it's loaded up. So event construct is what's happening as it's loaded up. So we want it event construct, pre-construct for the text, right? So in text, it's blank at the moment. So what we're going to do is we're going to right click on this and promote to variable. And then this variable will just be the text. So we can just call it text, but we need to make it expose on spawn and instant editable. That means we can manipulate this variable in other places, right? Another thing we want to do is set the main color of the button, so the color that it will be when it starts up. So you want to get the button main, drag that in, set background color, and then this will be its background color. So we're going to promote this to a variable again. Button main color, right? If you compile and save, now on this button main color, if you come down to the bottom, it will tell you what color it will be. Look, default value is black at the moment. So we're gonna just say, let's make it a blue, a light blue. Okay. Another thing you can do is you can also set the font and the font size. So you can grab the button text again, come out of this, set font, right? And then out of unset font, so this is the text we set in the font for, right? You want to right click on this and split structure pin, and see now we get the font size here. We actually get the font object as well, but the default font is the one that we set here, which is the Anton, right? So you can set this as a variable as well, promote to variable, but we're just going to leave it as the default. But we are going to make the font size as a variable. So right click, promote to variable, and you can just leave this as in font size. Remember to make it expose on spawn and instant editable. I can't remember if I did that with button main color. No, I didn't. So expose on spawn, instant editable, right? So that is your main button, right? But what we need to do is we need to make it that when you hover on it, it's going to change color. So what you want to do is come to your button main. See now on button main, you've got these events unclicked, unpressed, unreleased, unhovered, unhovered. We want to make it change color when it's hovered. So that is unhovered. Right, you get this main, right? We need to make an event called is hovered. This name's already used. Okay. We can call it button hovered. Right, and then we're going to come off that and call, and then we're going to say that's that's unhovered, call button hovered, right? We also need to right click event on added to focus path. Now this is for the controller. So this is going to be the same as unhovered. We're going to drag that into there, compile and save. Button main, we're going to make another one called unpressed. And we're going to make a new event, and we're going to call this button pressed. And then we're going to grab that event, we're going to drag it out, call. Go back to your button main. And we're going to unpressed is also going to be the same as unclicked. So we're going to grab that and we're going to drag that out. We also want it when it's unhovered as well. So go to button main again and unhovered. We're going to make another event called button unhovered. Right, and we're just going to call that. Right, so the reason why we're making these new events, because we already do have these events made, but the reason why we're making the new events is so we can call them elsewhere, and also so we can make event on added to focus path the same as on hovered. Right, so now what we want to do is you can get rid of event tick. On event construct, this is where we need to make the code for when it is hovered, right? So we're going to drag this up a little bit. Right, we've already got a button main color there, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to come out of event construct and we're going to go bind event to button hovered, right? And now we're going to come off this and go custom event. And we can just call this is hovered, but hovered. You have to sort of mess around with what you're calling things because sometimes it doesn't like being named the same stuff as well. But basically this event that we've dragged off this bind event to button hovered, which is this one, is this one. It's going to trigger when either this or this is triggered. It's going to call this, it's going to call this, and it's going to call this. I don't want to get too like messed up, but like I'm hoping this is easy to follow along. But yeah, so basically, right, whenever the button is hovered, we want to get the button main and we want to set background color. And we're going to drag that into there. So remember, this is the variable for the main button color. This is what it will start off as, which we set as sort of like a light sort of purple, right? So when we now need to do the same thing here, we need to turn this into a variable. So you can promote to variable and we can call this hovered color. Compile. So you can get this hovered color. We're going to set this to a sort of a light pink, say, right? Compile and save. Now we need to make an event on button unhovered. So button unhovered, bind event to. So we're doing pretty much the same thing as what we just did there. But this time, what we're going to do is when the button isn't hovered, we want it to go back to its original color. So you can just grab this stuff, copy, paste, bring it down here, come off this event, custom event, add custom event, call this unhoved, drag that into there. So basically what's going to happen with this button is when the button is hovered, it will go like a light pink because that's what we set down there. When it's unhovered, it will go back to its original thing because we used that variable in there. Look, that same variable that we used to set the main color. We've just put that back there. So the beauty of doing all these sort of events and stuff like this is that we can add sort of like animations and sound effects to it all. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to the designer and we're going to add an animation. So we're going to click on the button main. We're going to go down to animation. We're going to add a new animation. We could just call this but of, right? And then make sure it's blue. Go to add button main because that's the variable we're working on. And we're just going to go transform because we're going to make it go a little bit smaller when it's hovered. And let's just make this say 2.5. I like to do it 0.2 actually. It's not super, it's, you know, it's a short little quick thing, like 0.2, see? Right, so if you haven't got this scroll bar at the bottom, just go down to view, range slider. Now you can scroll into it and stuff like that. Right, so on the button main, we've got transform. We want to make the scale go smaller. So if we could just go down to scale, click there, see it's 1, go to the end and click 1 and 1. So you've got 1 there, 1 there, 1 there, 1 there. Right, we want to make it just a tiny little bit smaller. So let's go to about 0.1 on the timeline and just make it 0.9. Make that 0.9. So now look, it goes like that. See? And that's the animation done. I mean, you can do all sorts of things with the animations. You can do render opacity. You can change the color of it. You can make it sort of fade in or fade out and stuff. But that's just a very simple animation that we've made. The animation is called but have. Right? We're going to go back into our graph and find event to but hovered. Remember when on the event construct we made here, right? We're asking it, we're telling it, right, when it's added to focus path or when the button is hovered to call this event, right? To call this event dispatcher. Then we're making an event based on this event dispatcher, and that event is setting the background color to a light pink. Hovered color. Let's just make that expose and spawn instant editable. And save. Yeah, so the hovered color is making it sort of like a light pink, right? But what we can also do is we can play the animation as well on this same code. So we can say set it to this pink color, but also play animation. What animation do we want to play in there in animation? The animation that we made. So go up here, animations, but have was the one that we made. So now, whenever this button is in another widget, when it's hovered, it will go slightly smaller and pink. And then when it's unhovered, it will go back to its normal size and it will go back to its normal color. The same applies to sound effects as well. So I've put some sound effects into here. Right, so they'll be on a Google Drive if you do want to download them. We're going to play this sound when it's hovered. So basically just running the code off the hovered code basically. So just play sound 2D. And we're going to just drag it in. We're going to use button sound 2. You can put that in use asset browser. So sometimes though, these events will be triggered rapidly. So sometimes you might need to, you see the play sound and the play animation, you might need to set a do once node and put a tiny little delay. So what we're going to do that just to be safe. So we're going to add a little delay in it. Remember our animation was 0.2. It's why I like to keep, I like to know the times of everything so you can set delays and that accurately. So we're going to keep it to 0.2. Oh, sorry, we need to put a do once in it as well. to come before order code, type do once. So he's going to do once, set the color to pink. We put the delay after it all. Play the animation. Play the sound. Give it a 2.2 delay, not 2, a 0.2 delay. Bring it right back down to reset the do once. If you didn't reset the do once, it will only ever do that once, but you want it to do it each time after 0.2. So that's pretty much the button setup. I know it can be a bit confusing because you're adding all these event dispatchers, but let me just try and go over it very briefly about what's happening. Right, so we have a main button that we've made. We've made it in the size box of 200 to 50. We've added a button, which is a normal button function, into that. And then on top of that button, we've added text, right? We've made this button that we added in as a variable and we called it button main. We've added the text as a variable and we've called it button text. Then what we've done is on the event pre-construct, which happens before it loads up, we've took the button text, we've got that variable that we made, and we set it, and then we set it to this new variable that we made, which is a string, and we've made that expose and spawn in instant editable, which means we can open it in other widgets and stuff. We did the same thing with the background color of the button, so not the button text, the button main, and then we set that as a variable, and we've set that variable to purple, expose and spawn instant editable. We've also set the font size as an instant editable variable as well, and the thing that we're using to change is the button text variable, and that's why we're getting the font size for that button text. So that's on the event construct, right? So then on our button main, right, the events that are already determined in normal buttons, the unclicked, unpressed, we've took them events, but we've made our new event. So basically we're kind of overriding the default events, and we're making our own events, and the reason why that's good is because we can combine two events into one. So so we've took that event and we've made it do the same thing, and we've called that event button hovered, and the events are over here. And then what we've done is on the event construct, which is when the button is actually on the screen, we've took the button hovered event dispatcher and we've binded it, and then we've made bind event to that. We've called the event. So basically whenever this event on focus path or event hovered is activated, it's going to call this event, and it's going to bind this event here to it. And this event is all this stuff: do once, set background color, play animation, play sound 2D, set delay, reset it back onto the do once. So that's the button done with sound effects and animation. So now all that's left to do is to create the actual pause menu. So we're going to go back into our content drawer, go to our UIs folder, and we're going to right click, user interface, widget blueprint, user widget. We're just going to call this pause underscore UI. We're going to double click this and open it. It's always good as well to have the stuff that you're working on docked up here. So for example, because we're working on our button, we've got it docked up here, and this is our pause menu. So we've double clicked and opened our pause menu. If you don't know how to dock it, you just drag it by here by your left click, hold left click, and just dock it up there. Right, so this is going to be our pause menu. We're going to go up here and type canvas panel. Now, you don't always want to use a canvas panel. They're not always the best thing. So sometimes when you're first starting, when you're making any widget, game overs, all sorts of different things, you just straight away grab a canvas panel and throw it in. You don't always want to grab a canvas panel, but for now, we're just going to use a canvas panel. That could be a bit of homework. Find a better way than using canvas panel. Right, so what we're going to do is we're going to grab an image. We're going to drag that into our canvas panel. It's just a plain image. Over here, we're going to go anchors, anchor it to all, and then offset left 0, 0, 0, 0. So offset left, top, bottom, right is 0. So basically it's full screen. And then on the appearance of that image, I mean, you can use your own image if you want, but we're just going to use it and we're going to make it sort of like slightly grayish. Let's put a tinge of blue into it. Right. So this doesn't need to be a variable, and I think it is a variable. It doesn't need to be. Right. So that's just your image. We're going to grab a text. We're going to drag the text in. We're going to just over here in text, we're going to put game paused. Size to content. We're going to use the same font that we used before. Anton, we're going to make it say 60 or 100. And on the anchor of that, let's just anchor it to the top. And then offset 0, 0, 0, 0 to see how it's put there. So you can put alignment 0.5, that'll put it into the center. Right, so the position, let's just take it down a bit. Put it to like there. Right, so now this is just a game's paused. Nothing really special. Let's compile and save. We're going to just add this to the screen and take it away when we press the pause button. So to do that, we're going to go into our third person character. Right, so we're going to come into our third person character. We're going to find a bit of space. And remember when we made that input action, IA pause, we're going to right click IA underscore pause. And then we're going to come off started, because triggered and started are slightly different. Triggered is a constant. So when you hold it down, it's constantly firing. Started is a little bit like a do once. So it'll just do it once kind of thing. And then do it the next time you press it. So we're going to come off there, create widget. So I'm just going to show you quickly this, but we are going to rearrange this code in a minute. So under class, we're going to come down here and go to pause, the pause menu that we just made. On the return value, promote to variable. On this variable, call this pause wig. Just basically short for pause widget. Compile, save. You can put default value as the pause, so you could just put that in there. And then we're going to, out of this, we're going to go add to viewport. Compile and save. So now if we play the game and we press pause, that will come on the screen, but we won't be able to exit it because we've got no code for it yet. So I'll just let you know that quickly. So if we press play and press the pause button, game paused, but we can't exit it, we can't do anything. So you can just press escape to just come out of the game basically. So that's just getting the pause menu on the screen. But we want to be able to pause it to put it on the screen and unpause it to take it off the screen. So what we're going to do is we're going to drag this away a little bit. We're going to make a branch and come up back into true, but we need to make a condition. The condition is going to be, is the game paused? Right. So I've made a variable called is paused. Right. This is just a very simple variable. But what you can also do is get the actual, there's an actual function called is paused. So you can put is game paused. See, and this is an actual function. It's a pure function. A pure function means that it's got no input, so it can just sort of stand alone. So it is game paused. If it's true that the game is paused, we want to take it off the screen. So in a way, is game paused, not Boolean. So basically, it's saying if the game is not paused, if you press this button and the game is not paused, you want to add the pause menu to it, right? If you press the button and the game is paused, which would be false, you want to remove it. So all you need to do, come out there, remove from parent. You might have to untick context sensitive, move from parent, and the target will be the pause widget variable. But what we're also going to do is we're going to ask if it's in the viewport, because it might not be in the viewport. So out of false, we're going to come off this, put branch, and then get your pause widget variable, drag that in, and put is in viewport. If it is in viewport, true, remove it. If it's false, we don't need to do anything. So now what we do, if we play the game and press pause, it will come up. If you press pause again, it should go off. Oh, okay. So I'm going to leave this mistake in, right? So what's happening is we haven't told the game to pause. So it is game paused. If it's not paused, we're going to create this viewport. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to build this code up. So this isn't, so it's going to end up being right. You have to trust me. But so, right. So what's going to happen is this is why it wasn't doing this, because it wasn't paused. I'd added this to the viewport, but the game wasn't paused. So when it's true, set game paused and click this to true. If game is not paused, that's true. Set the game to pause, create the widget. If the game is paused, which would be false, I know this not boolean's a bit confusing, but so if the game is not paused, we want to remove it from the thing, but we also need to set this to not paused again as well. So the game paused would be false. So now what will happen is it will be on the screen and off the screen when I press the pause button. See, it goes back to the game. What we also can do is, because we created this paused boolean, we could set our own boolean as well. So we can grab this set, and we're going to set game paused. To true. Control V, Control C to copy it. I'm going to make that false. So that's just a boolean. If you haven't got an is paused boolean, just click there, make a boolean, call it is paused, whatever. It's just a simple boolean. That's not attached to anything. I'm just setting this now. So this is paused boolean is just a boolean. It's nothing to do with being paused, but I'm setting it to be paused every time the game is paused, if that makes sense. Right, so yeah, that's very simple. Get the game plays. If you grab the keyboard and mouse, right, simple. But we're going to add some buttons so we can start the game again, or we can go to settings, or we can go to quick game. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to our pause menu. We're going to type in vertical box, drag that in, and you can just put that anywhere, right? But in our vertical box, we want to put our buttons. So you see where it says common and it's got border button and all that. We want to use the button that we made. Remember, we called it button UI. So on user created, so if you scroll down from common, it will say user created at the bottom, and these are the ones that you've made. We want to drag in the button that we've made, drag it onto your vertical box. See, now the button's in there. Drag another one and drag another one. So we'll just have sort of like resume game, settings maybe, and quit. So remember when I was telling you that we made them all the instant editable variables. Look, if we look now, there's our variables that we made. We've got the text, the font size, and we can do that on each button. So we can set the text over here to be resume. Maybe I'd need to put the, so go back to the button. Remember when we set the fonts over here as a variable? We need to select our font. Compile, save, just as Anton. So if you go back here, now we've got the Anton font in there. So we hadn't selected our font in this bit of our button. Right, so see, resume, and then that one just be settings. That one can be quit game. Right, now, so this is our pause menu. We've got the 3 buttons. If you highlight all 3 buttons and come over to padding, and then you can just put, say, bottom, have a underneath each button, just put a space of like 30, so like that. Go to your vertical box and just drag it so it's more like that. So now, like, you see your vertical box, you can anchor it up here, just put it to there. Let's just put the, see these numbers here, like 460, 150. So try and, you see, if you see it, so it says size 244. Remember, we made the size 200, and that's the size of the vertical box going down, so you don't really want to change that. But we made the width 200 on our size box, if you remember. See these numbers, try and make them something that you can remember. So rather than have it minus 116.999, just put it as minus 115. And then instead of 472, 470. The more numbers you can remember, the cleaner everything will be. So now we've got a pause menu and we've got our buttons. But when this pause menu comes up, what we want to do is we want to go to the graph of the pause menu, and then on event construct, come out of event construct and put set focus, and then get the main button. So on this button, right, this is a variable. Let's call this play button. Go to this one, call this settings button. Quit game, call this quit button. Right, and then they're all variables because they are variables because we've made them as buttons. Right, I don't know if that made sense, but yeah, they're all variables, where some things won't be variables, some things will be, but it depends on how they're sort of made. Right, but yeah, so we've got a resume button, a settings button, a quit game, and they're all based on that master button that we made. So if we go to the graph again of our pause menu, we're going to set focus as the play button. Compile and save. If we go back to the game and we play now, the controls will work and the buttons will work, but the buttons won't do anything at the moment. So if you press play, or we press pause. Oh, okay. So I need to set these to be focusable. So click all 3 of them. Is focusable. Tick true. That's confusing because it's constantly hovered, right? So what we're going to do, we're going to work through this, right? So we're going to go to our 3rd person character. What we're going to do is where we've created the pause menu, we're going to, before add to viewport, we're going to come off this and we're going to go set input mode, UI only, player controller, get player controller. In widget to focus is the widget. When game is not paused, we're going to set input mode to game only. Get player controller. We're also going to add, just for the sake of this, we're going to add the set show mouse cursor. We're going to trick this to true. So set this to false when it's back to its game mode. It needs a player controller as its target. So we're going to show this mouse cursor. Press play, press pause. Right, so it's working on this. On the mouse is working. On the... I think I know what it is. Right, on our button. On unhovered, remember we made event on added to focus path. We need event on removed from focus path. Sorry, this is it. This will work now. Compile and save. So that's event on removed from focus path is doing the same thing as unhovered. So this will work now. So we've got the animation, we've got the sounds, but these buttons are not doing anything. Right, so escape. So we're nearly there. Right, so on the pause menu, now what we want to do is we want to make the functions for these buttons. So we're going to go back into our pause menu graph. And then if we look at the play button, look, we've got the events that we made. So on our button, remember these 3 events we made: button hovered, button pressed, button unhovered. If we go into our pause menu, for each of these buttons, so for each of these buttons that we made, we now have new events. Look, play button, button hovered, button pressed, button unhovered. So we don't need to make an event for button hovered or button unhovered because we've made it in the main button, but we do need an event for button pressed. So for an easy one, quit button, button pressed, come out of this and quit game. If, for example, you're making any sort of high score thing or some save settings or something like that on a quit game, you might want to save settings and stuff like that. So quit game isn't always as simple as quit game, but for this purpose it will be. Settings button is not going to do anything, but play button on button pressed, we're going to come out of this. Compile and save. We're pretty much going to do the same thing as what the unpause does over here. So what we can do is we can grab all of this. The only thing that we won't be able to grab is this pause widget, but we don't need it. We don't need this pause widget neither. So we're going to grab this. We're going to grab this and this. Control. We're going to go back in Control and C to copy. Go back into our pause menu. Paste. And come out of play button. It's going to set input mode to game only. It's going to set game as paused. It's going to we have a variable from our third person character. So to get this variable from our third person character, we would have to cast to our third person character. I mean, you can do, it's not too much of an issue in the pause menu. So let's just come out of this. Event we can come out of event pre-construct, cast to third person character. You might be in first person, or so you wanted that. Get player character. Out of this, promote to variable. So we've just got a variable for our third person character. Then drag this in down here. Get is paused. No, we want to set is paused. Set is paused. You might want to do this and cast to the player just so you can set this variable correctly. Right, so all we did is we went into our third person character, we took the logic from taking the thing off the screen and we copied all these nodes. This variable and this variable we don't need. This variable is in our third person character. That's why we've had to call it from there, right? But then we just copied all that, pasted it. We've had to cast to our third person character up here to get this variable so we can set these paused, right? But you remember when I said about we don't need this pause widget variable or this pause widget variable, because this is saying, is this widget in the viewport? This one's saying, getting a pause widget variable and saying remove this from the parent. But in the pause menu that we're in, that's just saying that's just saying itself. So it's saying, is itself in the viewport? And if it is, remove itself from the parent. So it's kind of doing the exact same logic as pressing the pause button twice. But if you press the resume button. So that's kind of it. The settings button doesn't do anything, but I mean you can do that if you want. But that's just a very, very basic pause menu. So back to it. Back to it. Pause. Quick game. Right, so when people are making pause menus sometimes and they're showing you pause menus, what they'll do here on this input action, so we're in our third person character, where we made the input to make the pause menu onto the screen. Some people will say, from here, they'll say flip-flop, and they'll get a flip-flop node, and the flip-flop node will do this logic. So they'll come off here, but I'll show you what happens if you do this, and they'll go, when you press it once, when you use a flip-flop, when you press it once, add it to screen. When you press it again, take it off the screen. So it's like, that's basically what flip-flops do. They do one thing and then the other thing. So you press it once, puts it on screen. Press it twice, next it takes it off the screen. That's fine, that does work, but it doesn't always work. I'll show you why. Right, so press it again. No, it's not working. And now, if I press the game, this is why you don't really want to use a flip-flop. And I press pause again, hasn't paused it. Because it's pressing it again. So you're asking it to do this when you press this once and press it again, but it's not dependent on any other logic. So it's doing what you're telling it to do. It's setting it on the screen, then it's taking it off the screen, but that doesn't know what's happened in the pause menu. So for example, say you press this button to resume the game, which essentially unpauses the game. The next time you press it, you're taking it off the screen when you want it to be putting it on the screen. So the best thing to do is make the condition of, is it paused? See, so that's why we're using the branch for is it paused. So you take the flip-flop away. So this branch is kind of like a flip-flop. It's saying if it's not paused, add it to the screen. If it is paused, take it off the screen. See, so that's why it's better than a flip-flop. So I'm just going to quickly go over everything that we've done. We've created an input action and we right-clicked, went there, input action. We created it. It was called pause. We had to make sure it was triggered when paused. We added that to our IMC default. We added the different buttons you can press to trigger the pause. We then made a button and we made a master button. We added the button main. We added the colors to that and the text. And then we set them all as variables so they could be accessed from other places, like when we're in the pause menu. We've got resume and settings. we created events in the buttons and binded those events to animations and sound effects. And then we just made a very, very simple widget with a simple image and some buttons on there. So this isn't a tutorial for how to design stuff, but it's just sort of like the functionality of it all. So yeah, so there's no animations within the pause menu, but there's animations within the individual buttons and the sound effects within the individual buttons. Essentially, you'll change the text, you'll change your fonts, you'll change your styles of your buttons. You might put an image in here, you might make some images for each buttons and stuff like that. You might change the sound effects. You can also go into your content drawer where we've made that pause menu. You can just right click, duplicate, and you could call this game over. UI, you could just open that up and it will just do the same thing. And then you type this, game over, and now you have a game over screen. And then on your resume, instead of saying resume, it says replay. And then instead of replay, unpause the resume, because it was the resume button, now it wouldn't be set game paused, it would be open level, and you would restart the level and stuff like that. That's about it. Well done if you've stuck all the way through. But I just wanted to try and sort of do everything to do with it. But if you do have any questions or if you get stuck anywhere, just let us know and I'll try and help you out. Also, if you find like the format of this tutorial a bit much, just let me know. Or if you think it was too advanced or too not, you know, just any thoughts you have on it, just let us know. And I'll be happy to hear them and happy to try and help or you know, do whatever I can to help. And yeah, thanks for watching, guys. And I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.